Everything the modern world tells you about your past is wrong. You have been taught by psychology, by culture, by the well-meaning voices of everyone who cares about you that your past is fixed, that what happened to you happened, that the events of your history are immutable facts that you carry forward, that shape you, that explain you. I am going to show you why this is not true, and I am going to give you a technique, one that I taught for 30 years in lecture halls in New York and Los Angeles, that will demonstrate the error of this belief not as theory, but as lived experience. The past is not fixed. The past is malleable, not in the way that your memory of it can change. We all know that memories shift and fade. I mean something far more radical. The crystallized effects of past events in your current life can be altered by changing the imaginal act that corresponds to those events. What happened to you does not determine what happens next. What you now assume happened to you determines what happens next. This is the teaching behind revision, and in these next 30 minutes, I will prove it to you. The technique I am about to teach you is called revision. It is, in my understanding, one of the most powerful and underused tools in all of what I ever offered. Most people who encounter my teachings focus on the forward-facing imaginal act, imagining the wish fulfilled in the future. Revision works in the opposite direction. Revision asks, what if you could go back, not in time, but in consciousness, and reimagine an event that has already occurred, not deny that it happened, not pretend, but genuinely revisit it in your imagination and construct a different version, and then inhabit that different version with real feeling. The answer is that the crystallized effects of the original event in your present life begin to dissolve. New possibilities open that the original event had foreclosed. I tell you from my own experience, revision changes the present, not because the past literally changes, but because consciousness is the only reality, and what consciousness holds as true becomes true. To understand why revision works, you must first understand something about the nature of time in consciousness. The conventional view is that time is a river flowing in one direction. The past is behind you, fixed and done. The present is this moment. The future is ahead, unknown, potentially malleable. And so you face forward toward the future, trying to use your imagination to create what you want there. But consciousness does not experience time the way a river flows. Consciousness experiences time as a series of states, and a state, as I have told you, is not a moment in linear time. A state is a felt reality, an inhabited assumption that carries its own effects into the world regardless of when, in linear terms, the original event occurred. When a devastating event happens in your life, a betrayal, a failure, a loss, a humiliation, what actually happens in consciousness? An assumption is formed, an assumption about what the world is like, about what you deserve, about what is possible for you. And that assumption, formed in response to the original event, continues to crystallize its effects in your life long after the event itself is over. The event is in the past, but the assumption formed by the event is active in the present. It is generating consequences right now in your relationships, your finances, your health, your sense of what is available to you. This is why people carry their wounds forward. Not because the wounds are in the past and therefore permanent, but because the assumption formed around the wound is in the present and therefore active. Now, revision does not go back and change the event. What revision does is go back, in imagination, and change the assumption formed by the event. It constructs a different version of the event, one that would have formed a different assumption. And when that different version is inhabited with real feeling, the old assumption, which has been generating consequences, begins to lose its hold. I want you to think about a specific event in your life. Not necessarily the most dramatic, one that left a residue, a conversation that ended badly and changed a relationship, a moment of failure that installed a belief about your own capacity, a loss that formed an assumption about what is available to you in this life. That event is done, but the assumption it formed is not done. It is operating right now, shaping what your outer world shows you. Revision says, what if you went back to that event in imagination and this time constructed it as you wish it had gone, not in anger or bitterness at what actually happened, but with genuine, specific, sensory imagination of the version that would have served you. The conversation that ended in understanding instead of rupture, the attempt that succeeded, the moment that opened instead of closed. And then, this is the key, you inhabit that version. You feel it. You let it become, in your imagination, as real as the version that actually happened. You replay it as though it is memory, not fantasy, but memory, the memory of something that went well. The subconscious does not distinguish between an event that happened in the outer world and an event that was fully and feelingly inhabited in imagination. Both become, at the level where the law operates, equally real, equally causal, equally able to generate new consequences. This is not self-deception. This is working with the actual nature of consciousness, and it is the technique I call revision. Let me now tell you precisely how to do it. We have covered the foundational principle. The past is not fixed in the way you have been taught. What is active is the assumption formed by past events, and that assumption is generating consequences in your present right now. Revision works by going back in imagination, constructing a different version of a past event, and inhabiting it with enough feeling to install a new assumption in the subconscious. This is not a denial of what happened. It is a deliberate act of consciousness to change what continues to happen as a result. Now I am going to give you the specific steps, the precise method for performing revision, and then we will practice it together. Stay with me. Revision is performed in a state of relaxation, ideally the state akin to sleep, at the threshold of sleep, but it can also be done in any moment of genuine stillness. The key is not the hour of day. The key is the depth of feeling you are able to bring to the revised version. Here is the method, step by step. Step 1. Identify the event you wish to revise. Be specific, not a category of bad experiences, but one specific event. The argument on a particular afternoon, the rejection from a particular person or institution, the day something broke that changed what you believed about yourself. Step 2. Hold the original event in your mind briefly, not to dwell in it, but simply to locate it. Acknowledge that it happened. Do not resist it. Do not relive it with full emotional force. Simply see it, the way you might look at a piece of furniture you are about to move. There it is. That happened. Step 3. Now construct the revision. Ask yourself, how would I have wished this to go? Not a fantasy of perfection, but a realistic, specific, sensory version of the event as it could have unfolded differently. The words that were spoken, different words, the right words. The response that came, the one that opened instead of closed. The outcome that was reached, the one that left an assumption of possibility rather than foreclosure. Be specific, be sensory. Let it have the quality of real memory, not a wish, but a remembering, as though you are now simply recalling what actually happened, and what actually happened was this new version. Step 4. Inhabit the revision. Enter the state akin to sleep or whatever stillness you have available and play the revised scene through your imagination. Feel it from the inside. Hear the words. Feel the quality of the air in the room. Feel the change in your body that would accompany an outcome that went well. The ease in the shoulders, the opening of the chest, the simple relief of a thing resolved. Step 5. Let the revision replace the original in your imagination. Not in your conscious recollection. You know what happened, and I am not asking you to forget, but in your felt sense, in the imaginal version you carry, let the new version become the one your subconscious holds. Allow yourself to feel what you would have felt had this version been the one that occurred. Now, I want to tell you something about the effects of revision that I have observed over many years of teaching this technique. When you revise a past event with genuine feeling, when you truly inhabit the new version, the effects in your present life do not always arrive the way you expect. The relationship that was damaged by the original event does not necessarily repair itself in a direct, traceable line from your imaginal act. What happens, more often, is that new possibilities simply begin to appear. Doors that had been closed begin to open, seemingly on their own. People who had become unavailable to you become available again, for reasons neither they nor you can quite explain. This is because revision does not change the past in linear time. It changes the assumption formed by the past. And when the assumption changes, the consequences, which were generated by the old assumption, also change. The world rearranges around the new assumption as though it were always so. I have seen people revise failures that had defined them for decades and find themselves, within months, achieving what those failures had convinced them was beyond their reach. I have seen relationships declared dead revive, not dramatically, but quietly, in the natural way that living things revive when the conditions change. The condition that changes is always internal, always the assumption. Now I want to address something important about the emotional difficulty of this technique, because revision is not always easy. Sometimes the event you need to revise is the one that carries the most charge, the most pain, the most anger, the most grief. And sitting in imagination with that event, even to revise it, can feel like approaching a fire. I want to tell you, this is the event you most need to revise, not to bypass the emotion, not to pretend the pain was not real, but because the events that carry the most charge have formed the deepest assumptions, and the deepest assumptions are generating the most significant consequences in your current life. Approach the difficult event gently. You do not have to do it all in one session. Begin with a brief visit, locate the event, acknowledge it, construct the first rough outline of the revision, and then allow yourself to return to it again and again, each time inhabiting the revised version a little more fully, until the new version has more feeling behind it than the old one. This is how the assumption changes, not by a single dramatic act of imagination, but by the gradual accumulation of a new feeling tone around the event, until the new version is what your subconscious reaches for when it encounters the memory. There is also a daily practice of revision that I taught, which operates on a shorter time scale. At the end of each day, before you sleep, take a few minutes to review the day that has just passed. Identify any moment that did not go as you would have wished, any conversation that left a residue, any interaction that installed a feeling of limitation or failure or disconnection, and revise it right there before you sleep. Construct the version that went well. Inhabit it briefly. Let the day end in consciousness with the version you wanted rather than the version that occurred. Do this consistently, and you will find that the accumulation of unrevised painful experiences, which most people carry into sleep each night and deepen with their attention, gradually ceases. You stop planting new painful assumptions each day. The soil of your subconscious becomes clear, and what you plant there intentionally, in your imaginal acts, in your state akin to sleep, takes root without competition. Man's imagination is the only redemptive power in the world, and revision is that power turned toward the past, healing it, clearing it, releasing you from consequences that no longer need to continue. We have covered the full method. The 5 steps, the way revision changes the assumption rather than the event, the way the effects appear in ways you may not predict, but which follow from the internal change with perfect faithfulness to the law, and the daily practice that keeps the soil of the subconscious clear. Now I want to take you through the visualization, a guided first experience of revision, here together. And then I will close with the teaching that contains everything we have covered today in one final truth. Stay with me, we are at the heart of it now. Before I guide you into the visualization, let me give you the practical framework you will carry out of this conversation. First, identify your event. Sit quietly for a moment, not during the visualization, but before this, in preparation, and identify the one event you wish to begin working with. It does not have to be the most dramatic event in your history. Choose one that is active, one that you can feel still has a pull on you when you think of it. Second, write the revision. I recommend writing it, not as a diary entry about what happened, but as an account of how it went well. Present tense. First person, as though you are remembering something that actually occurred this way. The words spoken were received the way you intended them. When you parted, there was nothing unresolved. Let the writing be specific, sensory, brief. Third, use the revision at night, in the state akin to sleep. Lie down, still the body, enter the threshold, and play the written revision in your mind as though it is memory, as though this is simply what happened and you are now recalling it. Fourth, use the daily practice. Each evening before sleep, spend 5 minutes in review. Identify what needs revision, construct the revision quickly, inhabit it briefly. Let the day close in consciousness on a version that leaves no residue of failed assumption. This is the practice, consistent, undramatic, patient. Now I must address the question of whether revision erases the lesson of the original experience. Some people worry about this. They say, but that painful event taught me something. I learned something I needed to learn. If I revise it, do I lose the lesson? I want to distinguish carefully between the learning and the assumption. The learning, the genuine understanding that came from a difficult experience, that stays. It is part of you now. It has shaped your wisdom, your compassion, your capacity to understand others. What revision removes is the negative assumption that accompanied the experience, the belief that you are not enough, that the world is hostile, that what you want is beyond your reach. That assumption is not the lesson. The assumption is the wound. And the wound does not need to continue generating consequences in order for the lesson to remain. You can have the wisdom of the experience without the ongoing cost of the assumption it formed. Revision makes that possible. I also want to speak to those of you for whom the events needing revision are very old and very deep. The childhood experience that formed the core assumption, the early wound that has been generating consequences for decades. Begin with a smaller event, not the oldest, deepest wound first. Begin with something more recent, something more accessible, something where the charge is present but not overwhelming. Build your facility with the technique. Learn how it feels when revision takes hold, when the revised version begins to carry more feeling than the original. Then, when you have that experience under your feet, approach the deeper events. You will find that the technique is the same, only the stakes are higher and the results, when they come, are correspondingly more profound. The most important conversation you will ever have is the one you hold with yourself. And much of that conversation happens below the surface, in the habitual emotional tone that runs beneath your daily thoughts, shaped by every event you have ever lived through that formed an assumption. Revision gives you access to that conversation. It allows you to change not just your thoughts, but the felt assumptions beneath them. And when the assumptions change, everything changes. Persist in your revision. The world must conform to the new assumption. It has no other choice. Close your eyes, let the body settle, shoulders down, jaw unclenched, hands easy. Breathe slowly. Once, let it go completely. Now bring to mind a moment, not the hardest one, just one that carries a quiet residue. A moment you would have wished to go differently. Locate it gently. Simply see it, the way you would see a room from the doorway without entering. Now build the revision. How did it go when it went well? Construct the first image. You are there. The moment is before you, and this time it goes as it should. The words are the right words. The response is the one that opens. Feel the ease of it, the relief of a thing resolved. The quiet satisfaction of an exchange that leaves nothing troubled behind it. Let this version settle into you as though it is memory, as though this is simply what happened, as though you are recalling it because that is what actually occurred. This moment went well. Breathe slowly. Let the revision be real. Let the new feeling settle where the old one lived. Not forcing, simply allowing the warmth of the better version to occupy the space. Stay here. This is revision. This is the imaginal act turned toward the past, healing it from within. Breathe. Whenever you are ready, bring this feeling with you as you open your eyes. I told you at the beginning that everything the modern world tells you about the past is wrong. That the past is not fixed. That the crystallized effects of past events in your present life can be altered by changing the assumption formed by those events. I want to close with the deepest truth behind this teaching. You are not the sum of what has happened to you. You are not the accumulation of every event that formed an assumption, every wound that installed a belief, every failure that created a boundary around what you allowed yourself to desire. You are imagination. You are the power that formed every assumption in the first place, which means you are the power that can reform them. This is what I mean when I say man's imagination is the only redemptive power in the world, not redemption in a future life. Redemption now. Redemption of the present from the consequences of the past. The freedom to build a new assumption and watch the world rearrange itself to conform to it. You have always had this power. You have been using it unconsciously, by default, to crystallize the assumptions formed by what has happened to you. Revision gives you the choice to use it deliberately, to change not the past, but what the past continues to cost you. That is the only redemption that matters, and it is yours tonight. Begin tonight with one event, one revision. Write it. Inhabit it. Let the day close on the better version. Do it again tomorrow, and the day after. Let the practice become your nightly habit, the inner clearing that keeps the soil of your subconscious free and ready to receive what you intentionally plant. Consciousness is the only reality, and you are consciousness with the deliberate power to shape what it holds. What you desire, you already are in eternity. Revision simply removes the debris of the past that has kept that truth hidden from you. Return when you are ready. There is always more to discover here.